All right, so this is What If Scenarios, and in this podcast, we talk about all kinds of different scenarios, whether it's realistic, sci fi, or anywhere in between, and maybe a mix and mash of them. One thing that I'm seeing is that I wanted to cover today is about global currency. So, how I typically would do this is going to pick pieces of, let's say, for instance, we'll go in depth at a later video, but this is kind of summarizing some of my ideas so I can further pursue and look into what I will be talking about. So I started coming up with the idea we all have these different currencies through countries. And I should probably look back and see where it all started. I mean, and that's going to go way back when. But basically, currency is can be resources. It can be, money. But the biggest thing is, I know roughly it came about if you had a product way back in the day. Let's say you had chickens and I had cows. Well, how many chickens would go for a cow? And kind of went that way. But then it's like, how much of let's say you made apple pies. What would I trade you to get that apple pie? And or the materials to make the apple pie. The other deal is, oh, what if that person had everything you had? What if you were a squash farmer? They had squash, they had zucchinis, they had okra, whatever they had. They probably wouldn't see a need to trade with you. Then it comes down to maybe services such as, okay, I'll work on your farm, I'll work and help you do this, and if I can get that. But again, everyone has to live, whether food and shelter is most essential thing. And then, of course, down the road, there came currencies and then banks and all this other stuff that kind of will tie into what I'm going to bring up about global currency. Global currency is, I can see, first off, two reasons. I could definitely tell you one reason right now why I could see it happening, and then there's another reason why I could see it not happening. So with global currency, the bottom line would be unification, whether it's a good thing or not. The unification can come from, um, let's say, whoever the major players in the world, whether it's country or people, bloodlines, whatever, they say, hey, let's go ahead um, and make a currency that we are over. So we control the resource, kind of like what things seem to be going like right now. So they control the currency, and then so they would have the most power, basically. And then the way I can also see it not happening is because right now, as it is, the U.S. dollar was so dominant for a long time, uh, and then so it had more power than all the other currencies. But now everything seems to be, it fluctuates so much, but then it's also leveling out to a specific, like, who's really in charge? Because also, the dollar used to be backed by gold, it used to be backed by oil, and now it's kind of what we think, just because we're used to it being backed by something. And right now, we need to use it to do other things. But again, if, let's say, for instance, Americans, if we were revolted in a way of, let's say, protests, we'll say that, and we didn't buy anything. And it's kind of weird, kind of going that route, but it seems more like it's a pushed uh, reason. It's not because we chose. It's just so. Another thing is too, when it comes to collapses, you have the boy, I guess, of the 1920s. You had the U.S. Economic Great Depression, and then so that depression went and things rebuilt. My opinion, I believe certain entities restructured certain things to in their favor. It's kind of the same thing where back in the day, again, American history a little bit, real brief. The founding fathers basically were against banks. That's banks were big on control. So for the longest time we were without it, but then there's always a way for powerful entities to move and create law where they want it, create rules where they want it. So they got in there, and it made it to where the banks are power, of course. I think the biggest thing that comes to is the whole global currency would be about power, of course, but who would be the ones to control that power? Um, you have that summit every year or whatever in Davos or something where all the big players of the world go there and talk about where the world's going, where they want it to go. Right now, though, I saw a thing where they said the yen, Japanese yen, is taking on a lot of the, believe it was basically debt. And China has a lot of our debt, so we owe them a lot, or in America. So we owe them a lot. I'm sure they're buying other countries as well. How do you have power when you have debt? Debt means you owe. So you owe some country, you owe somebody. Um, and even in America, we had to keep going to the Federal Reserve to get money. They could print out money no matter what. And it kind of, I mean, it means inflation, but basically it means nothing to them. Um, and so that's where it's kind of, I see another restructure coming, but with that restructure, because crypto was invented as we know it to be when it first came out, like Bitcoin, it was supposed to fight banks. It was supposed to be a person to person transaction. And again, when you have something like that, you can't truly have. I think it was they said Benjamin Franklin said you can't have privacy and security at the same time. You either have one or the other, because a lot of times these things will fight. So that's the same thing with Bitcoin. People, the government would bring up how it was lawless, and a lot of criminals used it. Criminals use cash. Criminals use whatever. They can use whatever they want. Force, cash, anything. But Bitcoin was something they didn't control. And so there's a lot of ways for people governments to get in there and make sure to utilize it in the way they see fit. So whether it's, and they started doing the whole system of trying to find a middleman, because you're eliminating the middleman in crypto. And then you have the bank come in, or government, whatever, try to make a middleman, such as a bank, in crypto. And then they don't care really. They're getting their money. And that's the biggest thing. They're getting their cut in something. They're getting their control. But so those things were happening, and then more crypto comes out. So crypto wasn't just a basic. It wasn't going to eliminate currencies. It was a currency with multiple other currencies like Ripple, Ethereum, all that coming in. And it depends on who made that. But there's so many ways for that to be more of a scamming deal where people would just take any crypto. They're like, hey, we're going to start a new crypto. And then they would get the millions of dollars that investors put in it, much like sometimes people when they short stock markets and all that stuff. Excuse me. But then you have so you have that also being much like countries having different currencies. So no matter what, there's always that power play. You want multiple things. Even if you were to invest, you don't want to invest in one thing. You want to invest in multiple things. And that's the other downside of crypto. People would kind of hold on to it like a trophy, a collector's item, or they're like, oh well, it's a stock market, because then they started doing the crypto stock markets where I remember Robinhood would do this, and they're like, oh, get Bitcoin, but you're not buying the Bitcoin. You're investing in Bitcoin. So there's no reason for that. If you're investing in a company, sure, and you can get money from both of them if you pull out or whatever. But crypto, it's better to have the actual item. But it's not easy to just get the item without paying huge fees or going through a company. I remember, I think it was Kraken, who fucking got hacked all the time. So people lost their money or their crypto all the time. But people still used them because they're the first, I guess, or one of the first ones to do that. And of course, they just have to rebrand their name and be something else and keep doing business. But it's real shady. So you don't. It's it's kind of weird. You used to put a crypto in a. You could do a physical wallet, which is like a, you know, storage. Um, but the big part on that is, again, you have specific addresses. If you lost your address name, it'd be hard to get your stuff back, or passwords, all that other stuff. So it gets complicated, and it's easy for people who know what they're doing to take the money from other people. There's been so many, all kinds of like hacks and robberies from people getting into other people's accounts, or they're taking their full on computers or whatever they're doing, but then they're getting millions of dollars of crypto, Bitcoin, whatever it may be. So still not a great option, unless again, you're trying to scam people basically, and I believe crypto was supposed to take a good stronghold and was supposed to be a good thing, but with many good things, people will turn it around. And then you have you have the, let's say, U.S. dollar, then you have all the euro currencies and all the Asian. You have currencies from every country, and some countries use. I'd have to look into that, but I'm pretty sure there's countries that use the same currency. Um, There'd probably be smaller countries, so using the main deal. So most than anything, I would equate those to states, but I think they're considered countries in other areas of the world. But that is one thing where I could see a global currency coming to also support. If I came from America and I went to, um, I'm just gonna name some big country, China's, Russia, something like that, and then we went over there, you could use the same currency, so it's an easy transaction, kind of like a person to person type of deal. You got Cash App, who's very big on that. I mean, I haven't ever used it in another country, or I would assume you would have to have that country's wallet for that. But if they had a specific type of identifying, how to put it, especially with AI and stuff coming out, you could probably have like a currency. Uh, Basically, it would change currencies. So I don't remember what China's currency is called. We'll just say Japan. So if I came from America and Japan's a big tourist country, basically, I mean, they have a bunch of tourists coming in. Not so much. I guess they're doing that whole kicking them out or something. I don't remember, but basically, either way, we'll say we go to Japan, and then it's like, if you were, even if you had this different type of currency, let's say it's all global though, then maybe actually it'd be more of a exchange still. Instead, there would be something implemented as an exchange, so then you keep your currencies in power, but then you have a device that would do a automatic exchange for what the current deal is, because there's tons of fees when you do an exchange in another country, or out and about inside that country. I know a lot of people say do the exchanges in the airports because it'll be a little cheaper, but or try to do the exchange before you go to the country. Um, so yes, they would probably lose money in that, but if there's a small transaction fee for every exchange, then there could be that as well. Maybe that could be in a way a global, not quite a global currency, but it would be a global something that would be implemented in order to do like a global currency. And I think that if whoever was to do that, then that would make more sense to me than actually going and changing everyone's currency again, unless it's one unified world. We all use the same thing, go to different places, it all amounts to the same. But then I could see that more going in the route of communism, where everyone kind of makes the same thing, same amount of money, or based on whatever they're doing. And then there's the universal basic income idea, which in a way makes sense, but then in a way it also comes to the same thing, where how are you going to provide that money? Like, if you're actually thinking about it legitimately and just not printing off a shit ton of money every time, because where does that money come from? Then you really have no value. But if everyone, like Elon was trying to push, oh, you'll have a robot to work for you, maybe I could see something like that. But what will the robots do? And then how do we get the money in return? But in a way, that's kind of like what miners do when you're trying to, the RAM miners, when you're mining crypto. So if you're mining crypto, you have it used to be, I remember, you didn't need a whole lot of RAM, but everyone's working at the one finite amount of Bitcoin, and that's going to go for every crypto basically. But let's say you're mining for Bitcoin, and then you end up, um, the stronger or the more miners you have, the bigger sum you'll get, versus the somebody may get a very, 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 very tiny portion of that. So again, a lot of the big time miners now are countries. I think China's like the number one Bitcoin miner right now. And so if you're a person competing with a country, and on top of that multiple countries, it's going to be tough to get anything. Um, so again, that comes down to who has the most money, who has the most power, who has the most ability to do certain things. Uh, the currency part, I can't see them. I can see them working towards making a global currency, but again, it'd be the top dogs owning it. And I'm not going to say billionaires, but I'm going to use that word for right now. It could be anything, like I said earlier, bloodline, or whoever controls the world, which I do believe would be multiple people from multiple different countries. Kind of my idea on that. But then they would be the ones dishing out all the money in proportion to however they see fit. Or if they owned everything, like I know that was a saying for a while, be happy and own nothing. Uh, if they went that route, where we literally did not own anything, and they're like, all right, here's your allowance, like a parent to their kids, or, um, I don't know, king or lord to their slaves, something like that. Again, money is there to enslave people. There's benefits to it, absolutely. But right now, it's more of a, you gotta work to live. And I know other countries say they don't do it that way. Ours, I think it's they work to live, and I think the saying was Americans live to work, something like that. But basically, I can see it being, as you can notice throughout time, cost of living goes up, but your pay does not keep up with the cost of living, does not keep up with inflation. When you get raises, you don't get much. I remember working at many jobs where they were talking about, oh, when this first started, the culture was great. And then we'd have cookouts, we'd do all these things. But now that's not much of a thing. And now it's who can do the most work for the least amount of labor. I think when it goes to, if somehow, some way, people are able to make robots to do those functions, absolutely. And then if you were to do it, I think Elon was even talking about making like a, you can do your passion projects basically, and these robots would work for you. But then there's, and if they can do that, but it's just like, how would you fund an economy? Because a lot of times it's like, we'll talk about it, baker, because that's, people like eating, people like sweets, whatnot. If you were to have, would you bake and have your robot bake for it? I'm sure there's robots who can absolutely do that, but I remember fast food places, sure, but how much would they make per the amount that they would work, and how much would these companies be willing to pay a robot? I guess technically it'd be you. And then would it be like the better robot you get and send them to work, would they get a better portion? And McDonald's would only be so good as long as people still eat there. That goes into a separate thing I want to talk about at a later date about the food and kind of the changes with that, but how the world's changed the way they make food, or how we're expected to. Yeah, well, I'll get into that later. But either way, um, there's, I would say, there's less reason to do a global currency than to really just invite or invent another system of how we use currency. But of course, you don't want too many options, because if you have too many options, then that can, some of them would just go by the wayside, and others will kind of prop up more. So it's almost, I'm sure there's plenty of currencies that came through time that just didn't work, or another country or would go over, hey, how about you use my currency? You got BRICS coming out now. That seemed like it was dying down after a little, its first it first coming out, but basically I think it started peaking back again more recently, and I don't remember all the countries. I do remember it was like China, Russia, Brazil, and maybe some of the Middle Eastern. I think the Saudis or something along those lines. So you definitely have competition for one another to be dominant, and that, again, the power dynamic is going to be the reason why I don't believe we'd have a global currency per se, but more of a how we would more go, like, again, the exchange route. Like, I can see whether it goes from crypto to actual US dollars, or US dollars to another currency. And US dollars just the example, just because from the US. But I can see that being more the route, which actually I would think would be pretty cool. You still keep the power dynamics to where people are willing to make certain, let's just say, economical moves. I don't believe people would be against that altogether. It just make things easier when going through one country to another country, and or making purchases that from one country to another country. Like, I don't know, but I was playing with that with my head, and at first, after doing it for probably weeks now, it was more of a thing of, at first I'm like, yeah, global currency makes sense. I can see them going that route, but I do believe a restructure is happening. Regardless, I don't know where that might take us, but or who's going to be the dominant currency, or if they're going to combine a few, because again, BRICS is combining countries and agreeing to use a certain currency. That again seems more like it would go the route of global currency if everyone jumped on board or something. But then who, I could see that being more like a, let's say if there's a United Nation currency or something like that, but every country together, and they, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But that was just kind of some of my thoughts right there. And this is what if scenarios, what if global currency. And I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment sections, and we can pick this up at a later date and really go in depth on it. All right, till later.